What's up, everybody? I'm Wes Goldberg, the host of RealGM Radio, and today we are kicking off our division preview series with the Atlantic Division. I'll be joined by Jared Dubin and Baraheni to discuss a bunch of things. We're talking about the Celtics, the Knicks, the Raptors, the Nets, and the 76ers. Where do the 76ers fit into this thing? What do we expect out of them and Joel Embiid and all the health issues and everything that's going on in Philadelphia, the craziness, the impossibility to predict them, plus how bad did Boston get? We got quite a bit of disagreement on the episode coming up on where the Celtics fall into things and how does Mike Brown change the Knicks? Does he change them for the better? We're going to discuss who got better, who got worse, the most impactful newcomer, the most interesting rookie, and then we're going to make some predictions for the upcoming regular season. Let's jump in. It's RealGM Radio. Thanks so much for tuning in. Again, the best way to support the show is to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you're following us on your favorite podcast app to get the show every week. This is our Atlantic Division preview. I'm here with Jared Dubin from Last Night in Basketball and the Double Dribble podcast. Also, Baraheni from the Athletics NBA Daily. We're going to be talking about the entire division, including some of the biggest moves from the offseason and which teams we think are going to make the playoffs. So a guideline for the listeners. We'll start with who got better, who got worse. We'll go to our most impactful newcomer, our most interesting rookie, and then we're going to look ahead to the season. We're going to rank these teams in order. We're going to discuss how many of these teams and which of them make the playoffs, and we'll talk about finally a player that we'll be discussing differently a year from now. And if we don't get to some of that, no big deal. We're going to keep this loose here. But let's just jump right in. Here's how they finished last season in the Atlantic Division. Boston, New York, Toronto, Brooklyn, Philadelphia. Jared, let's start with you. When you look at these teams, who do you think got better?
Just in the offseason, or just like who will be better than last year? Because I think that the latter of those questions includes a team that I don't think necessarily got better this offseason, but will be better next year. The Knicks and the Sixers, I think, pretty clearly got better this offseason just through adding talent. And I think the Raptors will be better than last year because you would think that they will be putting more NBA level players on the court than they were, especially at the end of last season.
Why do you think the Sixers got better?
I mean, they just injected more talent, I guess. Like they brought in Edgecombe in the draft. That's someone that should make them, or, maybe not, because
we'll see.
Rookies are usually bad. But, I think he's really talented. We'll talk about him, I'm sure, more later. But them too, like, you would think that they're going to have more NBA players on the court than they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
How much time we'll actually see those guys on the court, who the hell knows?
Yeah.
But at a certain point, you can't get like 0 games from all these guys.
Yeah, what about you? What do you think?
I have the exact same list. I think both Philly and New York got better. And by virtue of like Philly probably re-signs Quentin Grimes. That was sort of baked into my decision-making here.
Mm-hmm.
And then New York with Gershon Yabusele and Jordan Clarkson getting added to that team. And potentially more here. I know we're kind of waiting to see what happens to fill out the rest of the roster, but I think those two got better. And also for the Raptors, even though it wasn't an off-season move, just like Brandon Ingram is going to be on the team next year, and he will at least play. So that's part of the calculus of them getting better.
I don't think
even
there's
if
any
you're
question.
not, even if you're not a particularly big fan of Brandon Ingram, which I would count myself on the lower end of the spectrum, like it's a lot better than having like just to throw a name out there like Jamison Battle out there.
Sure. Yeah. No, totally. I mean, you just have another guy who's can give you at least 20 points a night. You know what I mean? Because he's just a guy who, I don't know, over the last 5-6 years has been 20 points.
Should we rank ours, the three of us, on like the Brandon Ingram scale, like on the spectrum of fan of Brandon Ingram or not? So you on the high end of Ingram?
I don't know.
Where were you before he got traded to Toronto?
Yeah, I wasn't that high on him before he got traded to Toronto, to be honest with you. But I do think he, like what Jared just said, like his utility on this team will be wildly useful because they struggle in terms of offensive creation. And if there's one thing that Brandon Ingram can do is score in a pinch. Especially in half-court settings, this Raptors team is probably still going to struggle, but a guy who takes and makes difficult shots is Brandon Ingram, especially in that mid-range area. I think he'll have a lot of opportunity to do that in Toronto, and so I think the utility for the Raptors makes a lot of sense for him. How high I am on him as like a number one, get them to be contenders type of thing. And this is probably more about the Raptors in general, but like long term, I don't know what the Raptors are with Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes, etc., as their number one and number two guys. In terms of this season, I definitely do think they're better than what they were last year.
So they were 10-22 in clutch games last year.
Yeah.
Is Brandon Ingram the guy that's getting the ball at the end of these games? Is that sort of the
yes?
Is that the vision?
Full stop. That's going to be the. I mean, like, look, he's just gonna, by virtue of being the only guy who probably will be able to get a bucket, he's going to be the guy for sure.
I won't take that Jacoby Walter slander, but I understand the point. I don't know. I might be on the high end of the Ingram's.
Ears just perked up at slander right there. Let's not use slander incorrectly.
Right.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I might be on the high end of the Brandon Ingram fan scale here. I think he's. I don't know. You're gonna get a boost just by not playing in New Orleans, and I think you got to bake that into the evaluation. I don't know. I think he's a better playmaker than he's shown.
Honestly, I've heard that, and I just don't know how much of that I can actually bake into my analysis. Like, yeah, you're right. He probably will be better than what he was over the last couple of years in New Orleans because contract extension talks, injuries, whatever. He spent a long time. Part of that was the Raptors tank plans, but he spent a long time out with that ankle injury that he sustained in December. I'm curious to see if they have a plan for him to be more healthy going forward in the future. That's a big question for him. It's availability. I don't know. I made a video just recently saying like, hey, here's a reason why he can be an all-star in Toronto. Now, a lot of things have to go right for that. Like they have to win games, and he has to kind of get back to what he was doing when he won Most Improved Player, which was shooting the ball more from three, being more kind of available defensively is the way I would put it, harshly, just being a little bit better on the defensive end probably makes sense. And also the playmaking. This is also taking away an answer that I have coming up.
Okay.
But anyways,
all right.
That's why I would say the Raptors end up being a little bit better.
You mentioned availability there. You both mentioned Philadelphia in terms of getting better. I see, like, they have to be. Like, they can't be that bad.
But they can.
But they could, right? And that's the scary part about that. I don't know that anything they did in the offseason makes me feel better.
And
I agree, man. Yeah, I know. I would not be surprised at any outcome for the Sixers. Like, it's hard to gauge Embiid playing 50 games. That seems like a lot. And Paul George is heading into the season with this knee thing. So I don't know. I have no idea.
I do want to put a pin in the Sixers.
Consider them a real team. Like,
yeah.
I don't even know how to think about them. Like, I barely even put them in the who's going to finish where standing. I was just like, okay, the Sixers are in there.
Right. Yeah. Just throw them to the side.
We could do it, but like I ranked the 4 teams and then I just had Philadelphia floating off to the side. I'm like, anywhere below the Knicks and ahead of Brooklyn is where Philadelphia is probably going to finish, but maybe below. I don't know. I have no idea. It depends. You guys both mentioned the Knicks that got better. I had them on my list too. They add Jordan Clarkson and Yabusele, Mike Brown as head coach, Tom Thibodeau out. I don't know. Jared, have we talked about the Brown for Tibbs swap yet?
I don't think so. I'm like, my reaction was mostly just like, okay, like that's fine. Yeah. I view Mike Brown in very much a similar vein to Tibbs, and it really seems like all the Knicks wanted was for their coach to be not Tibbs.
Right.
Like that's really what it seems like happened here.
Yeah.
And like he is different than Tibbs in subtle ways, and that seems to be what they wanted. They didn't want to go too far outside the box. He is obviously a defensive-minded coach throughout his career. His Kings teams were not good at defense because they had some of the worst defensive personnel you could possibly imagine. Mm-hmm. The Knicks have better defensive personnel than that because they have good wing defenders, and when Mitchell Robinson's healthy, they do have someone who can protect the rim. But obviously, they have 2 pretty significant liabilities in Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. And whenever you put those guys in the pick and roll together, it's free points for the other team.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how he overcomes that on that end. But I think the differences between him and Tibbs offensively should help them a lot. Like just getting them playing faster than they did over the last couple of years. Like they were the slowest team, man. Just walking the ball up the court, taking until 12, 13 seconds left on the shot clock to even get into their first action. You run one thing and all of a sudden it's a Jalen Brunson isolation. Like you can't do that, especially when your team is talented as they are, and you have so many different options as they do. they should be able to get through a bunch more stuff and be able to have more guys touching the ball. And you still have that Jalen Brunson bailout option, but it shouldn't be one action and then that. Like, you should be able to get through 2, 3, 4 different actions in a possession and still have that option down there, or like a Karl-Anthony Towns post-up option, or a Mikal Bridges mid-range jumper option. Like, there are different ways that you could go about your offense than what they were doing last year. Playing faster, playing with more purpose, getting the ball moving a little bit more and earlier in the shot clock. That should all help them. Like, is Mike Brown a better coach than Tibbs? I don't know. To me, they're very similar. But I do think that the subtle differences should help in the specific areas that they were deficient offensively, which over the last 2 years, their offense did slow down a lot in the playoffs, even while the defense got better than it had been during the regular season.
Yeah, I want to add to that, because I think the one thing that was really true about the Knicks offense last year was that it was solvable. Like, you could really figure out how to defend that, especially over the course of the season when teams started switching more often. Like, you saw them really struggle against switch-heavy teams, especially Cat. And, Caitlin Cooper just interviewed Rick Carlisle and talked about like random basketball. I think Mike Brown will help them play a little bit more random. You talked about pace, Jared, but like a lot of that is also just baked into being a Jalen Brunson team. And so when you have a guy like Jalen Brunson, it is about adaptability with him. Like, how much more can he add to his game, but also playing a little bit more random will help open up those isolations. So to me, it's even from their moves, even from Gershon Yabusele and Jordan Clarkson, you can tell they're leaning into more of an offensive identity. How much that plays a factor into them like taking that next step and being better than what they were, that's a different question. But I think offensively there will be more for them to do this year than compared to Tibbs' years.
Yeah. I think we're talking about like degrees of extremes, right? Like Tibbs played his starters a million minutes and was so like, okay, it's Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns, pick and pop, and that's our offense. And sorry, OG, sorry, Mikal Bridges, you don't get to touch the basketball. It just felt so extreme with Tibbs, whereas Mike Brown, if he dials that back a little bit and starts kind of moving those things in different directions, I thought he did a really nice job. You can have a different conversation about Keegan Murray maybe plateauing here a little bit, but I thought Mike Brown always did a really good job of making sure he was involved in the offense. Like he had that one set where Keegan Murray would start in the corner and he would wrap up around, get the handoff, and then do something with it. And just adding that onto the menu for Bridges or Anunoby, just one of those guys. I think it's those little things that just make the players feel a little bit more involved. And I do think Mike Brown has changed a little bit in the way he's coached since being hired to Sacramento, getting hired off of the Steve Kerr staff. I remember talking with Mike Brown about this, about like, the idea of the kumbaya offense. Everybody touches the ball, everybody's happier, and that's something that actually that produces better results as the season goes on. I think that's something that he actually does believe. Quick question for you guys, because we were talking about this, and I was just sort of thinking, is this the best team Mike Brown has ever coached in terms of depth? Obviously, like there's no LeBron James on this team.
Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah,
but like in terms of like 1 through 11 or 12, it's probably the deepest team he's ever coached.
Probably the deepest, but like LeBron make those Cavs teams, better. Like those guys won 60 games. I don't know if this Knicks team's going to win 60 games. I mean, they could. The East is that bad, and they are.
I was going to say, I think this Knicks team is actually poised to be the like 1 seed, win 60 games. They're like a juggernaut in the regular season, and in the playoffs, kind of similar questions rear their head. I don't know. That kind of feels like the vibe heading into
do it. I think the optionality they have this year compared to last year, with hopefully Robinson's healthy. We'll see. Obviously, on that front, it's basically, to me at this point, it's like a bonus. If he's healthy, you can't count on him.
Yeah,
but instead of having only one option to go 5-out stuff, where last year it was like, unless you play Deuce McBride with the rest of the starters in place of Josh Hart, then you're not getting 5-out offense. Now they have Yabusele to do that too. Clarkson is not really 5-out, but he's someone who attacks from outside in, because he's not a terrific outside shooter, and the last couple of years has been a pretty bad one. But he can at least get stuff going off the dribble and pierce the defense from the outside in, which really only Brunson did last year, and Bridges did, but only to the mid-range area and never all the way to the basket. And teams obviously knew that. So having a Yabusele out there to give another shooter in the front court, and then having Clarkson out there to give somebody else to penetrate the defense from the perimeter gives them a little bit more in the way of options than they had last year, when it was basically just you play deuce with the starters, which they never did. They played them for like 92 possessions with the starters in place of Josh Hart or something along those lines. And then it was like campaign and Landry Shamet.
Well, what do you think the starting lineup is going to be? You kind of hinted at it there. Some people are wondering, is Mike Brown going to start Mitchell Robinson? It doesn't sound like you think he's going to do that, though.
No, I do think he's going to start Mitchell Robinson,
Okay.
but you do have then you have Yabusele can come off the bench and play with Towns or play with Robinson. Clarkson can come off the bench, be the backup point guard in place of Brunson or play with Brunson on occasion. I don't know how much you want to do that because then you have two absolutely horrendous defenders at the point of attack. Clarkson at least has a little bit of size, but I don't know how much you want to play those guys together. But they have a little bit more optionality than they did last year, I think, and that'll be good for them too.
If they don't start Robinson, I think Deuce has to start for them. I don't know how tenable it is for Josh Hart to be the guy consistently. Now I know there's like the relationship factor and like he plays a big part as a leader, but I think he's been tenable to coming off the bench before. I don't think he cares, to
be honest with you.
I agree.
Play and be an important part of the team, which he absolutely will be. No matter what. But starting coming off the bench, as long as he's like able to contribute and be an important part of the team, I don't think he cares that much.
Yeah, he'll still play 30 minutes a night, right? Like that doesn't matter. More maybe, right?
I agree. I don't think you could start Hart. I think you've got to, just based on how defenses played them at the end of last year when they took Hart's guy and basically had him guard Karl Anthony Towns. To get rid of that, you just need more spacing. You need a threat out there from 3-point range. And McBride's been pretty good, I thought. And he at least looked good anecdotally in those minutes. I don't know what the numbers show, but like you said, Jared, it wasn't a super high sample size. One little note that I want to mention here, because we were talking a little bit about Tibbs and how much he plays the starters and stuff. I looked at it. The Knicks led the league last year in starting lineup minutes, minutes logged by their starters. The Sacramento Kings were second.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, and I think that was more a symptom of they had to. Because they had no depth last year. I looked back on a few other years, and that was not the case under Mike Brown. So I think that was just like a one-off, like we kind of have to do this type of thing. But I thought that was at least funny.
Most of the season was Doug Christie too, right? Brown got fired in what, December?
True. That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. So maybe it was the Doug Christie thing. I am shocked that neither of you said Brooklyn.
Got better.
They got better. They didn't get worse.
They definitely didn't get worse.
I think they got worse on purpose.
I don't know. They added a bunch of first-round picks. I kind of like Michael Porter Jr. better for them than Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson he needs to play off of somebody, and in Brooklyn there was nobody to play off of.
Sure.
So
right?
Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah. So I mean, like,
he can shoot the ball. He'll shoot it like a lot at least.
Do you think my question there is like, do you think any of those rookies are going to be winning their minutes? Because rookies don't typically win their minutes, and that's like the case for them.
Yeah, you might be right, but they get rid of D'Angelo Russell, they bring in Terrence Mann, they get rid of Cam Johnson, they bring in Michael Porter Jr. Nick Claxton might have a bounce back year. Maybe they didn't get better. I want to believe that they got better.
I think they want to be worse, and they will be worse.
Yeah, I think they
want to make sure that the lowest they can drop is 5 this year.
Yeah,
I don't know how successful they'll be at that, but that's probably the goal. I do want to mention. I should have brought up earlier, by the way. Trendon Watford was a good signing for Philly.
Yeah, I do like that.
I think should help them get better too.
I think he starts at power forward.
Good. Like Paul George is probably going to be out to start the year, right? So
yeah, I don't hate it. I can see where you're coming from with Brooklyn, but at the same time, I think this roster is like made because Jordi Fernandez is a really good coach.
Yeah.
And I think part of this is they are trying to make the worst team possible so that his coaching doesn't counteract any sort of wins and whatnot. I don't know. I think I would be shocked if the Nets are better this year than how many games did they win last year?
I think it was 26.
20
more than they wanted to, for sure.
Yes, yeah, more than they wanted to. I think that will not be the case next season.
Yeah, you guys might be right. Who got worse, and why is it only the Boston Celtics?
Yeah, it is the Boston Celtics. I mean, like, look, when you gut your team for salary cap reasons and getting under the second apron, you are going to get worse. But also, like, who is the front court player for this team that you're excited to watch? Maybe my selfish reason of excited to watch Chris Boucher with extra minutes, but really, like, you know, their front court is not good at all. Maybe Neemias Queta gets opportunity here.
Can I just read the names?
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
Parents, you might have to, avert your children's ears here. Chris Boucher, Jordan Walsh, Namus Keita, Luke Garza.
Yeah.
And Xavier Tillman's there somewhere.
It's Josh Minot, a racer.
Josh Minot.
Josh
Yeah,
Minot. Yeah, right. Josh Minot. He's
RJ
in there
Lewis.
too.
Yeah. I mean, they did add Anthony Simons. Maybe that's a little bit of like offensive firepower to counteract missing Tatum.
I don't hate that addition. We are recording this mid-August. When it comes out, maybe they've already traded Simons.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually a question that I have moving forward. That was part of my like newcomer thing, where it's like I'm intrigued by Simons playing in Boston's system. He could get a ton of threes up. I think he'll have a lot of opportunity in Boston, but at the same time, it seems like they're moving him. So I don't know if that is going to be a long-term situation. But I'm intrigued. Like, he seems like a guy who could take that opportunity and run with it a little bit, especially in their offensive system. But in terms of getting worse, they absolutely got worse. I mean, no longer Al Horford likely is going to Golden State. No Kristaps Porzingis, no Drew Holiday, no Jason Tatum. By proxy of that, they just absolutely got worse.
I totally forgot that Al Horford hasn't signed with Golden State yet, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Everybody keeps just penciling him. If you're another team, wouldn't you just be like, let's just make him a huge offer?
The only team that has money is Brooklyn. So maybe they get better if they have Al Horford.
And then trade him to, I don't know, the Lakers or something. So I have their starting lineup, the Celtics starting lineup, written down as Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Jaylen Brown, Chris Boucher, Namus Keita. And that was a flat guess. I have no idea. You guys could disagree with me. I don't know that it even matters.
I think Sam Hauser starts.
Okay, that was my second option lineup. So it was White, Pritchard, Hauser, Brown, Boucher, or Keita at center.
Although I think you could. I don't know how you guys feel about this. I'm intrigued by Pritchard starting, but I could also hear the sentiment for Simons over Pritchard.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think if he's still there, that Simon starts and they just keep Pritchard in the 6-man role and still play him a ton of minutes.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things that, we were talking about the moves that intrigue you. Basically, every move that Boston made was for a guy that shoots an absolute ton of threes on a per minute basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They are going to shatter their record for 3-point rate that they set last year. Like, Boucher takes a ton of threes. Garza in his limited minutes takes a ton of threes. Minot, Simons, all of these guys just get threes up and do hardly anything else. They're just going to drive up the variance as much as possible, which makes sense without having Jason Tatum. Like, they're going to be at a talent deficit for the first time in like basically forever. Mm-hmm. So the idea is just going to be shoot way more threes and hope you can get some wins that way. I think it'll work pretty well. Like, they're going to have a bunch of guys take a bunch of shots that, they're going to go, like, they're not going to be bad. Like, they're still going to be a pretty good team.
Isn't that what Charlotte did last year? Was they just tried to win the variance thing and they were pretty bad?
They don't have as much talent. Like, they still got Derek White, Jaylen Brown. Like,
yeah,
I'm not the biggest Simons fan in the world, but he can shoot.
Yeah.
Hauser can shoot. Pritchard is good. He can shoot. Obviously, just made the most threes off the bench, right?
It's just defensively. Yeah. I don't know where is this team. This looks like a bottom 10 team defensively. Maybe Joe Mazzulla, newly extended, can coach them up defensively. And players will tell you it's all effort, but I still think defense is a skill. And there's just not a lot of great defenders on this roster. That's the part that worries me about them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at their depth chart right now, and like a lot of their players obviously play similar position, and there's only so many minutes to go out for those players too. Like, you can scale up or down with a Sam Hauser and a Jaylen Brown, and maybe you could convince yourself that Derek White can play like a smaller 3 in certain situations. But again, to your point, defensively, how much are you going to succeed if you're throwing out smaller lineups like that? I will also say, to the variance point, Charlotte had like 2 guys who took the majority of their threes in LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. And then once Brandon Miller got out, it was like, all right, we're chucking this. We're not doing this scheme anymore. I think there's a world in which Boston is better, but I do disagree with Jared that they're going to be a good team. I think they will understand by the end of the season that their goal is to bottom out. And
I think they're going to be bad.
Okay.
I took the under on them. I think
how bad is bad? Like, are they going to be below 500?
Yeah.
Yes.
See, I would go like, I feel like 42-40 is like the most likely for them.
Wow. Okay. I feel like that is high on the Celtics team.
That is high. I think so too. I think they're going to win.
What's their over under? Do we know?
I just did this episode with Matt, and I think it was at 40.5, but let me double check that. I had it written down. The main concern I have with them is
Looks like they opened at 43.5, but it could be below that.
Yeah. So I think that's what I had written down for them, and I'm taking the under on that. But
well, so am I, apparently, at 42.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I know that Horford, Porzingis, and Drew Holiday were not what they had been when they first got to Boston, right? Like especially KP and Drew Holiday. So the talent out, I don't think is as big of a drop off as some people are saying. Like KP was barely available for them, so it's like, how much do you even count that? Drew Holiday at this point, you can make an argument that Simons is a better player than Drew Holiday. I don't know that I would, but you could make the argument.
I wouldn't, but I hear you.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page, but it's like a year ago that would have been an insane thing to say, and now I'd be like, well, yeah, you're right. He can hit threes. Yeah. But it's like that institutional knowledge that leaves, that know-how of how to play Joe Mazzulla basketball, that connectiveness that they had. That's the part that I think is going to be the biggest thing that leaves, especially not having Tatum there. Mm-hmm. That I just look at this team and I'm like, yeah, there's names that I like. I just don't know what they're going to do. Like, okay, like let's say they do just ramp up the 3-point shooting. All right, that's a lot of Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser. I understand variance at some point, but like, really, how many games are those three guys going to win you at the end of the day?
Jaylen Brown's there too.
He is there, and I do wonder about him in more of a featured role. I think that can go either way with him.
I think that's the swing factor here. Like if Boston does end up winning 42 plus games, it's Jaylen Brown has had an all NBA season. Derek White is going from like fringe all-star or all-star consideration to an all-star. And you see one of Simons or Peyton Pritchard take a leap in a major way. I think there is a world where Pritchard takes the added opportunity and runs with it. Like I could see that in my brain just because he was one of the best off-ball scorers in the league last year. And just with more opportunity, more shots, he could just thrive in a massive way. So maybe that's the way that they punch above what we're guessing here, 42, 43 wins.
Yeah.
Just feels like a lot of stuff has to go right for them. Yeah, and also a big Joe Mazzulla year too, right? Because he's had the 2 years of being on a finals team and having like the roster catered to you. Now you kind of have to go with
good on him for getting the extension now when he did. Yeah. This is a new job. He's never had this job before, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is a different kind of head coaching job than he's had in previous years. And I'll be interested to see how much they lean into the development part of it, because if this is a gap year, which obviously it is, there's an opportunity with it, right? Like there's an opportunity to develop Shireman. There's an opportunity to maybe finally figure out who Walsh is if he's an NBA player. Maybe one of these centers pops, and these are the guys. Like Jason Tatum's going to come back, but Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, and Al Horford still not coming back. Mm-hmm. So with this new ownership, are they going to be willing to go into the second apron? Like for Mazzulla, you go from installing a system and winning and chasing a championship to now developing, a 15-man roster. That's just it's a wholly different job than he's had in the past, and I am curious to see how he's going to handle that, because he also strikes me as a sicko, right? Like, Sean McVay had to do this. Jared, I know that I'm you could talk to this, but like McVay had to do this a couple years ago with the Rams after their Super Bowl run, and he almost like quit his job. He just because he was just so miserable with how that was going and he didn't. But it takes an adjustment for super competitive people.
Wasn't he the guy who said, fuck those picks, right?
That was Les Snead, the GM, but yeah. I do think that the sicko comparison to Sean McVay is a pretty good one. I think it's also very Boston to extend Mazzulla now, like right before this season, to be like, we're fully committed to this. We know exactly what we're doing. And I'm a Mazzulla fan. Like I know that that it's arguable that the way that he wanted to play last year played into the fact that they lost to the Knicks, because they weren't so much like every time you hear on TV, oh, they're settling for threes. Usually that just means they're taking threes. I think Boston actually was settling for threes in that series against the Knicks.
I agree.
Because nobody was attacking the basket to create those threes. Yep. It was all just guys taking them because they were there. Mm-hmm. And that was, I think, did play into the fact that they lost and the fact that they weren't able to overcome the defense that the Knicks threw at them. But I also think he clearly has such buy-in from everybody on that team to the way that he wants to play. And that's the most difficult thing to establish when you're a coach of a team. And he has that for sure.
As you mentioned Derek White before.
Yeah.
If he can scale up that to me is the key question for the Celtics this year. If they can hit that over, it's because Derek White is an all-star and because he's totally scaled up. His pick and roll efficiency numbers have been always good, but it's always been pretty low, like 3 or 4 per game, whatever. Tatum was orchestrating the entire offense for the most part last year.
Yeah.
Whether it was through the pick and roll or isolation, it was always Tatum with the ball in his hands, it seemed like. Derek White obviously can do that. His isolation numbers are good. His pick and roll numbers have been good, but lower volume. If he could scale up and basically become a true point guard of that offense, then I think a lot of that stuff starts to change where, okay, now you can kind of see some pick and roll. Now, obviously, it's your efficiency numbers in the pick and roll are going to drop when you're not kicking out to Kristaps Porzingis or Al Horford, and instead it's Keita, Garza, Boucher, Tillman.
Yeah.
But if he can actually handle that offense in a bigger role, that to me is the key there, because I still like Jaylen Brown as more of like a, hey, let's throw to you. You're our battering ram. You do that part, but we kind of need somebody else to handle and caretake the offense. I think that's Derek White's role.
Yeah, that's the question with a lot of these Celtics guys. Like, you look at their numbers, Derek White, elite spot-up player, can attack closeouts, can obviously knock down, catch, and shoot threes. Peyton Pritchard, very similar in that realm. Jaylen Brown, very similar in that realm. Anthony Simons, like, can do the pull-up shooting, and I think that's why he'll probably be on ball frequently. But, yeah, who's that guy for them that's going to create consistently and get downhill? I could see it being Derek White because he is pretty shifty. And in pick and roll situations, if he's paired with the right screener, I think he can do it. But it is all about usage. Like, I'm looking at his pull-up jumper numbers right now on Synergy, and he shoots like 33% on pull-ups, which isn't great. It's not good, but it's not bad, but it's not great either. He'll have more opportunities to do that next year, and he'll have to shoot well in the pick and roll if he wants to do it. So, yeah, I could see it. Also, Jaylen Brown playmaking reps, crazy. I'm very, very
Can he dribble it more than 3 times in a row?
Very skeptical of
They're going to turn the ball over a lot.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I also think it's important, like you said, to scale up White and Pritchard rather than shunting so much onto Jaylen Brown and Simons' plates.
Yeah.
Like, both White and Pritchard have been like 17, 18, 19% usage guys. I think it's important for them to get into the like 21 to 23% range rather than having Simons with like a 28, 30% usage rate. That's not what you want to see to me.
Also, like, that will help them figure out the identity of this team when Tatum comes back too. Because, like you guys have mentioned, no Horford, no Porzingis, no Drew Holiday anymore. Like, those guys eventually do have to scale up, you know?
Yeah.
Do we have a most intriguing move or a move that stands out from the offseason that we haven't talked about already?
Mine was the Yabusele one.
Okay.
I just think like he fits into what the Knicks want to do. I know we've talked about it a little bit, so I won't go too long. But like, philosophy wise, he matches really well with how they can add some offensive versatility to their front court. I think he's a Mike Brown type of player in terms of what he looks for in his bigs. I'm kind of intrigued to see how he'll do with the ball in his hands as like a hub a little bit more. But yeah, that was my pick. Just intrigued because I think he fits with what they want to do next season.
What do you think?
Yeah, I had Yabusele also. I had all of the Boston stuff, like I mentioned, with just all the guys who shoot a ton of threes. And then, I mean, do you want to go off on the Raptors and Masai splitting up?
Yeah, that is a big move. That is a really big move. Honestly,
that's a huge move.
Yeah, to be honest with you, when we were doing this, I kind of didn't even consider the Masai thing because so much has happened. But it is very intriguing. I mean, look, Masai has been the architect for the Raptors for over a decade. And so a lot of the team building philosophy comes from what he thinks championship level teams are. Obviously, Bobby Webster has played a huge role for this Raptors team over the last 4 or 5 years. I'm very curious to see how much their team building philosophy changes. Brandon Ingram, that trade in general, you know, as it's been reported by Michael Grange from Sportsnet, was a Masai Ujiri trade. Like, he pushed for Brandon Ingram to come in. So how does the long-term future of any of these guys look with whoever is president next? It's pretty likely that Bobby Webster will just take on the presidency role, and then they fill from the back end with other people and other general managers and, you know, other executives that they can find. But for the most part, I'm intrigued to see what it means for the future of this team. It's kind of weird to discuss the Raptors because everybody talks about like long-term future and what they look like, which I think is a valid question. Like, what is the long-term aspirations of this team? But I think imminently, like the short term, I think they'll be pretty good next season compared to what the calculus, the over under or whatever it is on what they're supposed to be as a team next year.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I'm shocked that it was Masai that wanted to trade for the 6'7" guy with long arms who can like kind of create, but also kind of not.
Yeah,
like that doesn't seem like him at all. But I mean, I have just as many questions about the short term of the Raptors as I do about the long term. Like, I'm not entirely sure how a Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett wing trio is supposed to work.
Yeah,
I don't know that makes a ton of sense to me, especially because none of those guys is a significant threat away from the ball, and the only guy on the team that can shoot pull-up threes is Quickly.
Yeah,
but all of those guys need the ball in their hands. So how much is Quickly going to have the ball? And it's like, I don't know. It's just very strange to me how all of that is supposed to fit together.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is like a very intriguing challenge for Darko Rajakovic, who, by the way, is always preaching like move off the ball, like let's pass the rock as much as possible. They've been in the top 10 or top 5 in assists per game basically every year he's been a coach, last 2 years. He preaches just like, let's try to move the ball 4 or 5 times before we take a shot. And so you have Brandon Ingram, who likes to isolate, likes to be in the pick and roll. I think they will lean on his pick and roll repertoire as sort of the main offensive engine for this team. He was a good pick and roll player. I mean, even with the playmaking, if you look at his stats in New Orleans for the last 7 years, he's been decent in terms of pick and roll frequency. He obviously loves to get into that mid-range area with that pick and roll. And I think Jakob Poeltl as the screener, who's a very, very good screen setter, near the top of the league in screen assists basically every year he plays. But that type of player will allow him to get to his spots more frequently, enable the playmaking. And then to your point about off ball, I think there's a world in which Scotty Barnes' utility off ball will be better just because he was great in the dunker spot. I think he'll be able to punish worse defenders with Brandon Ingram taking on the primary defensive matchups most nights. And so he'll be able to abuse some of these mismatch situations that they can create for Scotty in the post. I kind of think he was overstretched offensively last year, and that's why we saw a really strugglesome season from him. I mean, you go and look at the field goal percentage numbers, 2-point percentage, 3-point percentage of guys who are high usage. He is near the bottom of the league when it comes to efficiency. And so he just got asked to do way too much offensively for this team. So I think scaling him back will help him. And to the off-ball stuff, I think Immanuel Quickley can be a really good offensive player off-ball. I mean, he showed it in New York a little bit, being a catch-and-shoot threat, a guy who can attack closeouts. I think they'll lean on that more. With RJ Barrett, he does seem like the odd man out, but I'm curious to see how much they lean into how he played to start his career with the Raptors. So when he first got traded, it was him, Pascal, and Scotty, and like they really leaned in on RJ Barrett being a cutter. And he was excellent off of the ball. He was one of the best cutters in the league that year for that portion of the season. I think it was like 1.4 points per possession off of cuts, and his frequency of cuts was more frequent than he ever had in New York. So they really leaned on him to move off of the ball more often. I'm curious if that's something they do again in Toronto, just because they need that, a guy who can move off the ball and slash. If there's one thing RJ can do is get to the rim, and there's no one on this team that can get to the rim. So that's my way it works. That's the upside version of this. But they also have the depth behind them in younger guys who might be able to pop. And I think that's the swing factor for this Raptors team next year is like, can Grady Dick come in and be, I mean, he was awesome to start the year last year, but he kind of tailed off towards the end of the year. Can he be that 40% 3-point shooter for you? Can he be a guy who attacks closeouts for you consistently? Wes, you brought up Jacoby Walter. Very curious to see how he looks in year 2. They have some intriguing young players in a Jameson Battle, in a Jonathan Mobo, their rookie and Colin Murray Boyles. None of these guys are proven. Like none of them have proven to consistently win minutes in the NBA. If a couple of them do, now you're looking at a little bit deeper of a team, and there's sort of an identity there with what they want to do.
So
the young guys have to shoot, and you have to see like, the refrain from Raptors fans toward the end of the season about the defense over the second half of the year. I think you have to see if that can hold up when the guys that are going to play are actually playing.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And I think we've got to see, like, Pirtle's rim protection numbers can go up and down. He's a pretty good rim protector, but he's not an elite rim protector.
Yeah.
I think behind Ingram and Barrett, and then Quickly Quickly is a very good team defender, but he's small and can get bullied a little bit at the point of attack.
Totally.
I think you need to have really good rim protection behind that trio. So Pirtle has to have like a really good season on that front too.
Yeah, and I think to your point, like I think Scotty's going to help a lot in that department too, because his help side rim protection was just absurd last year. And I think like that's the main linchpin of their defensive identity. It's like, hey, we're going to make sure that Scotty can use his length on the help side, whether it's to cause havoc with deflections and whatnot, but just be that secondary rim protector for them next to Jakob. I totally agree with you though. By the way, they're like ceiling version is if they're like a top 10 defense, but a middling offense, and they somehow that's their identity next year leaning into it.
And that's part of the reason why you get all that length to it, right? Because now you got to go through the sea of pool noodles if you're a driver,
right?
And that's just a little bit more difficult. And that's the buy-in. You mentioned Darko there. I think his job is just to get everybody to buy in. As you were kind of talking about, you were going player through player, and I thought that was great because I did want to do a Raptors breakdown, and we just got it. But as you were talking through player by player, what they need to do and what sort of their best role is, I'm imagining like in the cartoons where somebody's like trying to plug a hole with their finger, like through the dam is like leaking, and then another one, and like now they're like all the way stretched out, and they've got like their hands and their feet are, and like if they move, the whole thing just collapses. That's kind of how that's what I was imagining when you were going through it. I was like, yeah, if everybody just kind of sits tight and does the thing that they're supposed to do,
true, yeah,
it could all coalesce. And if one of these things just it kind of shakes loose, the whole thing can collapse in and on itself. But I think it'll be really fun. It's an interesting team, and to me, there's just so much. There is a lot of talent on the roster, and in Eastern Conference, it just feels like some nights, they're just gonna make more shots than the other team. I think it's not going to be against the best teams in the Eastern Conference all the time, but you could just stack up a bunch of wins, just sort of.
That's also better. My pitch is like, look, this team at least has the machinations of like a solid starting five, and then I think with Grady Dick and Ochai Agbaji, who I didn't mention by the way, like those two will be good utility wings for them. That's probably their main 7, and then they have like 8 or 9 that they can maybe filter through with some of their younger players into Jacoby Walter. I'm really, really curious to see like how available Brandon Ingram is, because they're leaning on that a lot, especially offensively, because this team was not good. I mean, you go into every single play type they had last year, they were bottom 10 in every single play type. Pick and roll, dribble handoffs, isolations, doesn't matter. They were not efficient whatsoever as an offense. And so they're leaning on Ingram to be a guy who can help them in that regard. Really curious to see how available he is, because, again, that's a big question. But I think, like, Wes, I'll ask you this because I know you cover the Miami Heat. Do you think they are better or worse than the Miami Heat?
I think they're worse.
Do you think they're better?
I think they're slightly worse.
Okay. Do you think they're better or worse than the Boston Celtics?
I think they're better.
Okay. Chicago Bulls.
I said that mostly for Jared. But they could be.
I do
better
think
or worse than the Chicago Bulls.
They're worse. I think they're worse than the Chicago Bulls.
I think they're better than the Bulls. I think they're in that same sort of tier as what a Boston could end up being.
Okay. All right.
Play-in-ish.
Yeah.
Play-in-ish feels right. I feel like it feels spiritually so similar to the previous version of the team, where it's like you have a bunch of guys that could do stuff pretty well, but nobody that does anything really well.
Right.
And that's kind of the issue.
Right.
No, I can see that. To me, it's if they don't, because they've invested, like a lot of has been made about the financial investment they've made into this team, right? 8th highest salary, whatever. If they don't win games this year, there are going to, especially with the whole Masai situation that I just mentioned, there are going to be a lot of changes. And I think very quickly we will see them, like this is a rubber has to meet the road type of season for the Toronto Raptors. And given that it's a bad Eastern Conference, given that they've traded for Brandon Ingram and invested money and extended Jakob Poeltl and BI and whatnot, like the fact that the money has been invested and the conference is weak, if they don't win games, there's going to be a lot of questions about their long-term future.
And to go to Jared's point too, like they're similar to Miami in that way, where they have a lot of guys that do stuff really well, but nobody does anything at an elite level. And when you don't have that North Star, hey, we're just going to do this every night, and at the end of the day, we can just lean on this guy to be really, really special at this one thing. When you don't have that North Star, to me, it comes down to coaching. And that's why I think Darko is like very much under the microscope this year. It's like, okay, can you construct the identity? Can you construct the system that makes all this stuff come into place and work?
He also got extended last year, so he now has like a 2-year window to work through, you know, building this team up too. So yeah, there's sort of like a pressure on this team to figure out if they can actually be a winning basketball team.
So one of the other categories here was most impactful newcomer. We've basically talked about Yabu, and it kind of feels like that's where you guys were headed with that. I just want to give a shout out to Jordan Clarkson, who we talked about a little bit there. I just think that could potentially be even bigger than Yabu for the Knicks. I just love to see Jordan Clarkson in an environment that cares about winning. That guy's kind of a proven playoff guy. Like he's got a lot of playoff reps, and we kind of forget about that because he was in Nowheresville in Utah for those last few years. But having another guy to just come in and run offense that's not Jalen Brunson when Brunson's on the bench, I think that's going to be huge. Obviously, McBride can do a little bit of it, and he's getting better every year steadily. Campaign, they had him last year. He was there. You know, that's a player that played for them. But Clarkson, I mean, even last year, and you just go over the course of his career, like the reps that he's had in pick and roll is just way over where McBride or Cameron Payne have ever been. And so just having a guy who's like, okay, veteran, has been in playoff moments, we know we could throw him the ball, and it's like our whole offense isn't going to just go to mush. I think that's huge. And I think that compared to where they were last year versus where they are now with Clarkson, with the ability to do that, I think that's hugely impactful.
It reminds me a lot of when the Knicks had J.R. Smith, where Jordan Clarkson can create any shot. They're not always going to be good shots. They're not going to go in a lot of the time. He can create them, but the more you ask him to do, the worse he is. And asking him to just create shots off the dribble when Jalen Brunson is on the bench and just attack the rim as much as he can, because nobody else on the team last year attacked the rim other than Brunson. And Clarkson at least can get downhill. He's not always going to get all the way downhill, but he is going to attack at least. Asking him to just do that one thing, I think, should bring out a better version of him. I did have Mike Brown as the most impactful newcomer, though.
Nice.
Just like the differences, like we talked about earlier, between him and Tibbs, specifically offensively. And then, like, I think that there should be innovation defensively, too. Like, the Knicks being totally unwilling with Jalen Brunson and Karl Towns on their team to play zone defense. Like, they played 3 possessions of zone defense last year, and they were all on out-of-bounds plays at the end of quarters. Like, you got to be willing to try more stuff during the regular season. Play zone, switch more up. Like, the reason everybody was so surprised when they switched against Boston in the playoffs, they never did it during the regular season. Granted, it worked. Threw the Celtics off their game. They won the series, not necessarily because of it, because of what they did, you know, in the comebacks offensively and stuff like that. But you got to be willing to use the regular season, especially when you're as good as this Knicks team should be this year. Use the regular season as a lab experiment. Figure out what works and what doesn't, so that when you get to the playoffs and you need to lean on a different club than the one you've been using during the regular season, you're used to it and you're able to execute at a high level.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of the year the Bucks won the championship and they didn't go all out during the regular season. And it was just like, hey, even Giannis had a quote then where it's like, hey, we know what our priorities are. We're experimenting as much as possible with what kind of team we want to be. And like it turned out well for them because they won the championship. I think every team needs that type of year. Now, my pick for that this year for the Eastern Conference is Cleveland. Like, Cleveland is not going to be we're going to win 65 plus games this year type of team. I think they're going to try and experiment as much as possible with their but this is a different conversation. But generally, I think that's where they are in their life cycle. They are going to try to experiment as much as possible. My newcomer was Brandon Ingram. And we kind of detailed it right now, but I just think he's so important to what they want to do offensively. They were bottom 10 in pick and roll frequency each year under Darko. He is a pretty high frequency pick and roll player, and he relies on that heavily. How much does one side adjust to the other? Does he run less pick and roll? Does the team run more pick and roll generally? Just curious about that. And I think how good they are relies heavily on how good he is. So, yeah.
Maybe not the most impactful, but I'm just really curious to see what Michael Porter Jr. does with more space. He was.
I
talking
like
a
you
big
bringing
game.
up Brooklyn, man. I
Is
like
he going to be
it.
in more space? Like he was playing with Jokic and Murray. Is he going to be more space? Like I guess
Maybe not
more
more space,
space
more
to do
reps.
whatever he wants.
Yeah, more
but not more
responsibility.
space on the court.
Not more. Yeah. I meant like more room to roam is sort of what I meant by that.
Right.
Certainly not more space, but a lot more just room to explore and do things, which tends to be what Brooklyn provides players at this point in their careers, whether it's D'Angelo Russell or Michael Porter Jr.
That is true. He's now playing off of Cam Thomas instead of Nikola Jokic.
And is there really anything? Is there such thing as playing off of Cam Thomas?
Oh, don't let him hear this.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He goes off their podcasters. That's right. I don't know. I have no way. I have no idea which way this is going to go for MPJ. But he has a quote out there about, hey, no, now I have an opportunity. Okay, dude.
He's had a lot of quotes recently.
He has had a lot of quotes. He's a guy with quotes. Let's talk about rookies. Who's interesting? Who's intriguing? Where do we want to go with this?
I have a feeling we're all going to say the same name.
Okay.
VJ Edgecombe from the
On my
Philadelphia
list.
76ers. Okay. So the reason I loved him coming into the draft.
Me
and
too.
I think like what he provides is perfect for what Maxey needs in the backcourt. I'm really intrigued just because they have a little bit of a logjam in their backcourt between Jared McCain. I'm assuming Quentin Grimes comes back to the Sixers. That's part of the calculus here in the conversation that we're having. But I'm intrigued to see how Edgecombe impacts in his rookie year, just because I think he has a chance to be a really special defender, really talented athlete. So in the open court and in transition, he'll be able to do well. Obviously, the offensive stuff will have to kind of gradually go at its own pace. But I think Philly has the infrastructure, again, if everybody is healthy, which is a big question mark. Even if they aren't fully healthy, like if this is a 50-50 type of season for them, I think they do have the infrastructure for VJ to come along slowly. He can get more opportunity when the guys are injured. Right. And when they're fully healthy, he can slot into more of a tertiary role and probably thrive that way. So I think he's going to be awesome. How awesome is the question I have, I guess.
Jared, did you have Edgecombe as well?
Yeah, I had him too. I am very curious to see how much he actually plays when the guys are healthy. Yeah, because there is kind of a logjam in the backcourt, like especially if you consider George a wing. Because is he really going to play the four for them? That would be very weird. Like between Maxey, McCain, Grimes, and Paul George, that's a lot of minutes on the perimeter. And I'm not sure where Edgecombe slots in. Like, is he going to be a 10-minute a game guy when all those guys are healthy? And then when they're out, he plays more than that. I'm curious to see how that works out.
I had Edgecombe on my list also. And in terms of where he's going to play, Nick Nurse has said he's basically got two different teams now. He's got the when Joel Embiid and Paul George is healthy team, and then the Maxey, Edgecombe, Jared McCain, young guy team.
Crazy. He's basically running like a G League team. You know what I mean? Not in terms of talent, but G League teams always
it almost feels like
adjust.
what Kentucky was doing those couple of years when they had like 10 5-star recruits on their team. They're like, okay, we have the first line with the second line, and that's just what we're gonna do. Except sometimes the first line is just unavailable for months on end. Here's the other thing. You did a really good job, S, about talking about what Edgecombe could do on the court and all the reasons. I'm with you. I loved him at Baylor. I didn't understand any like I don't know if he could do what he's super competitive. I love everything about him. And I love that Philadelphia went ahead and picked him. The other reason I really like Edgecombe, besides the stuff on the court and the projections of him, he does not smile. And I think Philadelphia really needs that. He doesn't smile.
I like that.
He's stoic, dude.
I also haven't noticed that. I feel like I always imagine him smiling, but I love it.
He's not a big smiler. And you think about that Sixers team, you got Nick Nurse with his guitar. You've got Joel Embiid, who's sort of a goofy character kind of guy. Paul George, big smiler, wants to be everybody's best friend. Jared McCain, big smiler. Quentin Grimes, big smiler guy. I think you need one guy in there to just be like, no, we're going to take it seriously. Between him and Kyle Lowry, those guys are going to be like not smiling in the same corner of the locker room. And I think they need that. They need a little bit of like a snot factor to that team that was just like, no more nonsense, guys. Let's stop like doing all this other smiling stuff. Let's focus on basketball. I think that's going to be important for them.
I remember there was a paper at Sloan back in the day that measured like team chemistry by the amount of times guys high-fived each other and fist pounded each other and whatnot.
This is what I'm talking about. Okay.
I now want a like smiles per 36 minutes.
Wow.
Paper.
Was there a diminishing returns to how many high fives were given out? Like, could you over high five?
You definitely could over high five.
You could definitely over high five.
Yes.
I got a cup. I don't remember. This is going back like 12, 13 years ago or something like that. Maybe even longer than that.
That's funny.
This paper. Back to my Brooklyn roots here. Yegor Demon, I'm really intrigued by him. I have no idea if he's going to be good or bad, but he was like one of the most polarizing guys to see him kind of get the rock in Brooklyn and just sort of see it. We don't have to spend a lot of time on there, but I am very intrigued to see how that works.
I mean, you could list any 5 of their rookies, and I would be intrigued, honestly. Yeah, I agree with Yegor. I mean, I think he will probably struggle as a rookie just because physicality is something that he did struggle with at BYU. Like how that looks in the NBA setting where does he start for them? I
think that's the idea, right? If we've all
right. So if he is starting and if he's playing like 30 minutes a night, I think there will be a lot of growing pains for Yegor Demon.
There's gonna be a lot of growing pains for the whole team. Like they took a bunch of guys that are like point guard, point forward types, and all of those guys coming into the league are going to struggle with turnovers, stretching themselves to figure out like how much they can do compared with what they were able to do in college. It's going to be a lot. And I think they're going to struggle a lot, particularly on offense. They don't really have anything to build themselves around other than Cam Thomas getting his own buckets. And I know he did have more assists last year.
Yeah.
But
this is literally a team that could be upside down in assist to turnover ratio. Like they could literally have more turnovers than assists by the end of the season.
We also don't know if Cam Thomas will be back. Will any of these restricted free agents sign at some point? Like it's getting ridiculous.
They should make their own team. They should be like, you know what? Let's just all get together. It'll be Cam Thomas and Jonathan Kuminga not passing to each other. So that's it for the offseason.
Kuminga and Giddey not shooting. Like
Yep. Let's rank these teams 1 through 5. I think is a fascinating exercise for this particular division. I think we'd all have the Knicks probably at the top.
Yep.
And then I think Brooklyn at the bottom. And to me, 2, 3, and 4 could go in any direction.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm right there with you guys. I have no idea what to do with Philly. I just don't know what to do. You could tell me tomorrow that Joel Embiid has played 50 games and Paul George has played 50 games, and this team still somehow only wins like 35 games. So I don't know. I actually don't know what I would go with. I have it here as New York, Toronto, Philly, Boston. But you could convince me to flip that, and I would be fine with that. I have no idea, really.
Where'd you end up?
Yeah, I had New York, Boston, Toronto, Brooklyn, and then Philly. I just didn't know what to do with, and I didn't even put them on the list.
Put to the side. Right. Yeah.
Like, you could tell me literally anything about how Philly's season went, and I would believe you. I'd be they shut down the 76ers. Like, all right, that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I like the reason I have Boston at 4 was because I think with them having their own pick next year, will eventually be incentivized to really lean into like, hey, do we want to fight for the 10th or 9th seed in the play-in next year? Or do we want to allow Jaylen Brown to continue streaming and Derek White to continue podcasting? Like, do we, I think they are locked into this being a gap year. And also, if they do get the 9th or 10th pick next year, with Tatum coming back, that's a nice chip to be able to move or draft or do something with. I don't know. I think they would value that compared to being in the play-in. So that's why I think they're 4 here. But I don't know. Yeah.
I just think it's just too bad for them to fall out of the play-in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, there are at least, to me, 3 or 4 teams that we know 100% will be worse than them, basically, no matter what.
True.
And at that point, it's like, can you really be worse than all 6 other teams?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So I had the Knicks. I put Philadelphia at 2, just because. What do we? I could clip this if it ends up being right. I predict that the 76ers will finish 2nd in the Atlantic Division. So have that. I'm gonna timestamp.
I thought you were going to say Eastern Conference. Okay. All right.
The Eastern Conference, they're going to win 60 games. No. So my thing with Philly is, I agree. We have no idea what to do with them. They're never going to be healthy. My biggest question with them is, are they going to be as unhealthy to an apocalyptic level as they were last year? And I still think the odds of them being 100% healthy and getting like 70 games from Embiid and Paul George and then being as devastated by injuries as they were last year, I think the odds are pretty similar. They were so devastated, not just to their main guys like Jared McCain missing time, Maxey missing time. Like a lot of guys missed a lot of games for that team, and it just feels like that can't possibly happen again. Now, maybe it totally could because we're talking about the 76ers, but I just tend to think they've gotten enough games from Joel Embiid in the past. Paul George has played enough games in the past where they should at least be better than they were last season. So I'm going to go ahead and just slot them in at number 2 just for fun. I've got Toronto 3, Boston 4, Brooklyn at 5. We already sort of talked about this, but the teams that make the playoffs, I've got the Knicks, obviously, and then I've got Toronto in the play-in, and then I have one of Philly or Boston in the play-in. I'm including the play-in when we talk about the playoffs, by the way.
That was my question. Nice. Okay.
Even though I don't like spiritually believe in that, but it just makes it more of an interesting conversation for podcast purposes.
Yep.
So I've got 3. I feel pretty good about the Knicks, obviously, Toronto in the play-in, and then one of Philly or Boston making it.
Yeah, I've got 2 or 3. Again, for me, it depends on Philly, and I've already kind of pitched why I think Boston will lean the other way. But I'm going to go 2 or 3.
Jared, why is Boston going to win 60 games again?
I had 3, and then who the hell knows with the Sixers?
Right.
Like I think the Knicks in the playoffs, and then Boston and Toronto in the play-in.
Yeah.
For me, and then Philly. Like again, you could tell me anything.
Yeah.
So who's the player? This is our last segment here, and it's the one I kind of like the most. Who's the player we're talking about differently a year from now?
I had a bunch of them.
Same.
Okay, let's do it. Let's dive in. All right.
So Mikal Bridges, like no matter how this season goes, it will be either one way or the other.
Yeah, it was on my list. Yeah.
Like if he bounces back to something resembling what the Knicks thought they were getting, then it's going to be a much different conversation. If he has another season like last year, it's going to be a much different conversation.
It's going to be overpaid, shouldn't have signed to the extension, one of the worst trades in recent memory because of the first-round picks. That's what it'll be.
Right. And if it's somewhere in between, then I think we're still having a different conversation than we are now, where it's just an argument over which extreme it is. Mm-hmm. Where, I think you're more likely to get like somewhere in the 75th percentile outcome range where it's not as bad as it was last year. And I think some of what it was last year is the stench from the beginning of the season filtering into what happened the rest of the year. The beginning of the year, he was legit bad on defense. He was figuring out how to get like anything going defending with Karl Towns. And then for the rest of the year, I think he was like fine. And then the playoffs, he was very good for 2 rounds and then not as good in the conference finals because defending wings is much better for him than defending point guards. Mm-hmm. So that's something to watch out for. But no matter what happens this year, I think we're going to be talking about him much differently.
It's a great call.
Anybody on the Boston Celtics or Toronto Raptors. And this, I honestly, because like these 2 teams are just, you can swing one way or the other with them, and they have so many swing players. We already talked about Peyton Pritchard and how much that opportunity could maybe benefit him. Derek White is another guy. Mm-hmm. Anthony Simons, if he stays on the team. Jaylen Brown also is another guy we can look at in a different conversation if some of the ball handling does improve, which is a big question mark, truthfully. And then for the Raptors, it's the guys that I've mentioned in a Brandon Ingram, RJ Barrett. I do think Scotty Barnes has the most to like. He stands to benefit from being like not the number 1 guy on the team anymore offensively. I think he'll be able to lean into his defensive identity more and maybe even vie for an all defense type of team. So those are like the who might be able to shift their perception a little bit, Yeah,
I had Simons also for Boston, just like it's either going to be he gets up an absolute ton of threes and looks like, okay, like maybe Boston wants to keep him around.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be, oh my God, this guy has always been empty calories.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Like those are sort of the 2 extremes. I'm not sure if I even see the middle path actually happening. I think it's a little bit different than the Bridges situation in New York. And then for Toronto, I feel like there are kind of extremes there too, where it can be, all right, I see the vision. I understand what they were looking for in the OG trade. The fact that he can actually make shots off the dribble, the fact that he's a good team defender, the fact that he had good pick and roll chemistry with Jakob Poeltl when they were actually on the court. You can use him as a small guy screener for Scotty Barnes or for Ingram. You can have those guys screen for him too.
Yep.
Or it's going to be, oh my God, I can't believe they overpaid so badly in restricted free agency.
Yep.
Which they didn't have to do to begin with. Like,
No, I know. Yeah,
and like,
I know.
for me, I'm one of the biggest Quickly fans that there is from his time in New York. But even if you like him as a player, they didn't have to go that far with the contract. Like, especially given the new rules, you should be nickel and diming your restricted free agents. You shouldn't be just paying them before you get out there, unless it's a guy that you know that you're giving the max to. Like, he could have very easily been in the same situation that the restricted free agents are in now, where he just wanted more money than the Raptors were willing to give him. And arguably, from the Raptors' perspective, should have been in that position based on the way that the rules work now. But I understand he's not going to be ever more than like the 16th or 17th highest paid point guard in the league.
Yeah.
And that is like fine. But they also just didn't have to go even to that level.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think like injuries really hurt his perception last year too, because 33 games, like he just didn't get a chance to show anybody anything. And so, yeah, he definitely stands to benefit from that kind of swing of public perception. I'm very curious to see how he adapts to playing, because I do think he'll play off ball more now with Brandon Ingram on the roster. He's done it in New York, obviously. Like he was a guy who facilitated and kind of had the ball in his hands when it was with the bench, but when he was with the starters, he was that off the catch guy. So he's used to having to do that. Just he'll have to do it more often for a team that desperately needs his shooting.
Quickly is way better than what he showed last year. To your point, the injuries were a big deal. I mean, there was a point where people were like, he's the best player in the OG Anunoby trade and all that kind of stuff. Like, people thought very highly of Quickly, and it just feels more natural that he'll eventually kind of have a bounce back year, and then we are talking about him differently because
I do want to say that people that thought he was the best player in the OG trade are nuts.
Yeah,
like,
that's crazy. That is.
I'm
crazy.
on the extreme high end of Emmanuel Quickly believers, and even I was like, they traded him for the one guy where I can't even get mad at the Knicks for trading Emmanuel Quickly, which I was like very prepared to do.
I'm also on the it's funny you say that, Jared. I'm on the high end of an OG Anunoby. I'm like, I'm buying all the stock in the world on OG. Maybe not to be the creator we all once thought he could be, or the Kawhi Leonard, but he's also a guy who might be able to benefit from like everything this year. If they are running more random basketball with Mike Brown, I think he's a guy who might be able to just benefit from playing off ball more. He's not going to have to create a ton, but in a pinch, he might be able to create a little bit with his drives and his bully ball. We'll see.
If the
I
Knicks
do think opinions on him are kind of solidified at this point, though. Like, I don't know how much the conversation changes, even if he plays like to the 90th percent of his outcomes rather than the 75th percent of his outcomes or something.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
This is obviously hard to predict, impossible to predict, but let's say so we know what the Knicks want to do. They want to win a championship. Okay. They want to make the finals. If they come short of that goal, it's going to be 3 guys under the microscope. It'll be Mike Brown, it'll be Jalen Brunson, and it's going to be Karl-Anthony Towns. At the end of the day, those are the 3 guys. If they come short, wait,
is there another guy?
A different name in there?
Oh, I don't think that those are going to be the guys that people zero in on. I think it's going to be like Bridges and Hart.
Really?
And be like, they're going to be like, okay, we got to trade these guys so we can then,
improve.
Towns is probably like,
I think
Jalen Brunson is not getting
Cat.
blamed by anybody in New York if the Knicks don't win the finals.
That's fair.
Like, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I think Mike Brown will get some, especially if they don't make it through the conference finals. I think Mike Brown will catch some heat, and I think Towns will definitely catch some heat. But I think it's going to be like, okay, you got to trade Bridges, you got to trade Hart, you got to figure out what to do around like Brunson, OG, and then like there will be some you got to trade Towns. You can't win with him as your center.
That's what I was kind of getting at.
Do those salaries work for Giannis? I'm just curious.
Towns makes like $1 million less than Giannis does.
Wait, but can they do a Bridges Hart plus something to get?
I think that they can do Bridges and Hart next summer.
Oh, okay.
But the Bucks wouldn't be able to take in more money than they send out.
Yeah.
So you'd have to do 3-14 trade constructions.
Right.
One guy that we have not mentioned, and I agree with everything that everybody said already, but I think we're gonna have a conversation about Joel Embiid next summer, one way or the other. He played 19 games last year, 39 games the year before that. Now, 2 years ago there was a freak injury. Last year it was a million different things. I still think we're in the will he or won't he point with Embiid. Like, is he ever going to stay healthy? Are we sort of on the precipice of a new part of his career? Can he still kind of get back to that MVP level? I think they're still very much in the air. We might have our opinions of where that's going to go, but we're pretty much like, I think it's still an open question of, does he have one more year left in him? Can he do it for one more year? And I think we're going to know. I think this time next year, depending on how the season goes, we're going to know with Joel Embiid. It's either going to have been 3 years in a row where he just doesn't have it for one reason or another. He just did that big feature profile on ESPN about all that stuff and his body and all these things.
Yeah.
We're going to know. I think we're going to know.
I really want Joel Embiid to succeed and like have a healthy season. And, you know, hopefully like Dirk wasn't like this in terms of health, but just like the late career, like championship thing would be awesome for him.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but I'll take your word for it.
I'm sorry, Wes. But generally, I think that would be cool to do for Embiid. But I think I probably lean into we already know. Like, it's
really depressing.
It's hard for me to imagine a type of career where he ends up winning and mustering enough like availability to play May and June basketball. It's not about the regular season as much as it is like, hey, can you stay healthy for this 24 game, 20 whatever game window that we have? I just don't believe that is the case anymore. Maybe I would love for myself to be wrong in this situation, but I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm closer to we already know also. Like, I think whether, you know, he has it in him depends on what we're asking about. Like, what are we asking about?
Yeah.
Can he have another great dominant regular season when he's on the court? Absolutely. The dude is always dominant when he's out there. The idea of him making it through 4 rounds of the playoffs is just fantastical at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Just especially the way the playoffs are played over the last few years where things just get wildly more physical. He is obviously one of the most physical players in the league, but that physicality, like the dude's body just doesn't work right. And as somebody whose body also doesn't work right, I know how frustrating that can be. Like,
yeah.
Right. And look, if he could stay healthy, if he could play 60 games.
oh, no way.
I'm telling you right now I'm telling you that's not going to happen. There's just no way.
There would be value in keeping him around, knowing that.
I heard this somewhere on I can't remember whose podcast it was, but they were saying just don't start his season until January. So that way he only has to make it through 6 months rather than 9 months.
Well, that's what they did. That's what the Clippers did with Kawhi last year. Basically, he started in January, and like I mean, I know they only had to play 7 games in round 1. You know what I mean? Like they didn't have to go further than that, but he survived through the playoffs. You know, and maybe that is the case. Maybe that's the way that you got to do it. Also, like I think the next stage for Embiid's career is. You know how in Team USA, like he was just kind of a hired gun, like go out. This is an incredible team already, but we need you for this specific position, specific situation. I think that's probably the next version of Embiid's, you know, the next stage of Embiid's career.
This extension has got to kick in and then expire at some point.
Yep.
That's the rough thing with him, and that's why I think next summer we're going to be having that conversation of because we're not really having the conversation now of how does Philadelphia get out of this. They're still like in Philly being like, I don't know, maybe one more, like maybe he's got one more run in him.
Someone owns their pick this year, right? Again,
Probably.
I think someone owns their pick, so they don't have
Oklahoma City. It was top 6 protected last year, and the Sixers got to keep it. Is it still Oklahoma City?
It might be that. Yeah. So I mean, they don't have a wild incentive to tank either. You know.
Right. Trying to look it up right now on realgm.com. Maybe the real answer to this then is Edem Bona. Can he be the starter of the future? All right. Their pick next year to Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Top 4
protected 1 to 4 again. Or 1 to 4 this year and
again in
next
2027. It just keeps kind of
That's tough, man. So they don't even have like a let's try and tank for, you know, it just no, they can't do it.
Right, because even if you have the worst record, you can still fall to 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But they got lucky this past time and they got Edgecombe, who we all agree doesn't smile. So all right, anything else, guys, before we get out of here? Any other names on your list?
Nope.
That was it? Perfect. Thanks, guys, so much for jumping on here. Jared Dubin last night in basketball. As it's over at I always screw up the name of the podcast. NBA Daily.
Yes.
NBA Daily over at The Athletic. You guys do a great job over there. Thanks so much for jumping on, guys. Really appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.